Hello and welcome to Mytech U, the February 2013 edition, where today we are going to spend some time talking about Office 365 as a guided tour by Mytech. So what does that mean? That means that we've actually done, over the last 18 months, Mytech has done, this will be our third discussion around Office 365, but this one's going to be a little different. The last two that we did was actually talking about the features and all the different variables of Office 365 with regard to the different plans and the packages. And then when we did a second version, it was because there were some updates. There were some updates to the pricing. There were some updates to the plans. So we're not going to spend time on that today. We're going to do a quick overview as I hand things over to Micah. But the majority of this presentation is going to be, as Mytech has rolled out hundreds and hundreds of mailboxes and different accounts on Office 365, we've learned a lot. And so the guided tour is really to give the business owners and operators some visibility into, what are the variables that you need to consider by moving to Office 365 and what components of Office 365 might make sense for your business. And then we're also going to spend a little bit of time, and some of the verbiage and some of the content we're going to go over today is going to be a little technical, right? So we want to be able to give some of the technical folks that are joining us or watching in the future some visibility into things that they need to look out for if they're guiding their organization down the path of rolling out Office 365. And of course, Mytech's here to help, but that's where we're going to focus our attention today, is really kind of taking what have we learned, what are the things to plan for, and we're very fortunate we have Micah Linehan on the phone. He is one of Mytech's remote services engineers who's got the most experience of our team rolling out Office 365. And Corey was going to be joining us today, but our remote service team has actually been a little busy today, so he's not able to, he needs to service our customers at this time. So with that said, Micah, take it away, and I'll field questions from the attendees, and I'll interject them throughout the presentation. So please, Micah, take it away. Thank you very much.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. We're going to go through here and look at what is Office 365. It's our, we'll do a brief overview of it, but it's a host of suites and services. It's not just, licensing or anything else like that. It is, it's a full service suite. It's Microsoft's cloud services that really give you a great overview and advantage from pulling your email and other services out of your internal office and putting it somewhere where it's up and it's always available. It's cloud services, and I know that cloud gets used a lot, but it's moving your email outside of your office. And there's a number of different options that you have for purchasing with a la carte, or you can purchase it in bundles. The licensing varies anywhere from really around $4 a month to their full-blown license, which is $24 a month, and that just gives you a bunch of different features. You can go above and beyond that with, you start out with just a basic hosted email box, and you can move on up to getting email and SharePoint Online and Lync Online, and even in the higher ones, some phone support from a PBX standpoint of hosting your phone, which we're not going to really dig into today, but the step right below that is giving you a full Microsoft Office Professional Plus licensing per individual user. And from a small business standpoint, that is huge. It's a huge cost for really everyone involved in being able to put that in as a monthly basis and stay on the latest and greatest technology with Office 365. That's a huge cost saver and a great thing for licensing. The billing is done through it just directly through right through your Microsoft account. The administrator for billing gets notifications for it. You can do kind of monthly, or you can set it up where it goes quarterly, or you can just purchase it all in advance. The guided tour that we're going to do today isn't really going to dig heavily into but what we can do to deploy Office 365 and some of the kind of gotchas that we've experienced and that I've personally experienced, as well as going into, how do we prepare? I've made the decision to actually migrate, and we want to go with Office 365. We want to move our on-premise email and our on-premise CRM or SharePoint to Office 365. And how am I going to really do that? I see a lot of people tossing that around, and I really want to do it, but I just don't know where to even start. And then the third one, which is a huge part of Office 365 that I think a lot of people just don't even use or don't even know that it's available to them under certain licensing packages, is Lync. I mean, what does it do? Why we should use it is it's a huge productivity and a really secure, great way to collaborate and work on different things and communicate with your people, not only in your office, but other people that are using Office 365 in different organizations, and also, really just kind of hammering home the productivity standpoint. And from an IT standpoint, if you have somebody that you're able to work with, and we're going to try and demo it a little bit here later, is I want to share my screen with you so you can take a look and see what the actual error is, or I want to, hey, check this out, let's throw some ideas around on a whiteboard, which is a feature of Lync.
Yeah, and
so
we were talking yesterday, Mike, as we were preparing for this, I know just a little segment from that I like to throw out is that there's two little known and little used applications that Microsoft has that I feel are some of their best products they've actually ever built. One of them is Lync, and one of them is OneNote. So we're not going to talk about OneNote today, but we are going to demo what Lync is and what it can do, and it's one of the coolest tools that Microsoft's put out. So we're going to show you what that looks like a little later. So I definitely want to get some buzz around that because it's an incredibly cool and powerful tool that can be used real well in your business, and we'll show you some of that later.
Yep, and the different deployment options that we have for Office 365 really kind of get into, you can break it up into and get really granular with it. We're going to kind of stay broad and just really show you 3 different deployment options that are really your most common. The first one is just a base deployment. Nothing really too technical. You're talking about getting rid of your local Exchange server and your local email box, and you're moving it to a hosted environment. And it's the base of what Office 365 is. It's a hosted Exchange environment. The base deployment of cloud services only is very, very rudimentary. From end users are going to have their email address and a separate password for logging into their email. It's not going to be the same as an on-premise environment where they sign in and it's the same same password that they have for their computer is the same password that they use for their email. And that's one of the biggest differences in between a base deployment where it's just a hosted environment. And when you look at that, that's usually it's not a big deal for less than 50 users to really kind of go in and manage that. Because you're managing 2 separate sets of credentials and stuff, when you get into a larger than 50 users environment, you really kind of want to start looking at what our next actual service and deployment option is. And that's going to be an integrated environment. That's single sign-on. Microsoft Office 365 calls it federation or federating your domain. There's 2 technical types of it, so what I really try and explain it as, and it really makes it easier for everybody, is if we just call it single sign-on, because that's what it is. It's one password for your login to your computer and your login to your email. Very, very similar to have an on-premise Exchange environment and an on-premise email. Acts very much the same way. Directory synchronization tool is one of the biggest key components for single sign-on. It can also be used with your base deployment. And what that is that it takes what you have in your office for all of your users and tells Microsoft Office 365 and your online email, these are the users I have, and this is their email addresses, and this is all of my groups that I have for distribution groups and everything else, and these are all the people that are in it. It's a really, really simple tool, and yet it's a really, really powerful tool for managing all of your users in any environment, even at a base deployment level. There are some requirements for it for setting it up on a server and everything. It's a little bit more technical, and if there are questions on that, we kind of dig into it a little bit more later, and I can certainly talk about that.
Well, Micah, that tool is also a free tool, right? Because that's not a paid tool, right? That's a tool that's available that you can use it or not, right?
Correct, and that's why I mean, you can use it even at the base deployment level. It's completely free. You can use it at any subscription level with Office 365, and the only real requirement is it has to be put on a server that is not running your Active Directory. So the limitation with that is if you are in an environment where you only have one server and it's an SBS box, it's not going to be a tool that you can use. And that's kind of the biggest limitation with it. And if you have another box, whether it's a SQL box, something that's running like your web servers or anything else, you definitely want to use that and put that on there. And, you know, my experience is if you can use it, you want to use it. And then, so with the single sign-on, redundant proxy servers, redundant Active Directory, the biggest thing with single sign-on is, you know, if for a larger environment, getting into that medium business, into the enterprise level, the biggest thing with single sign-on is you do need additional hardware and additional servers to be able to support this. The easy way to kind of explain it is when you set this up, your proxy server or your federation server, single sign-on server, points and tells Microsoft Office 365, you guys don't manage our passwords anymore, our Active Directory does. And you need to have a redundant internet connection or a more stable environment, I guess I'll put, to support that. Because if you lose internet connectivity or those servers go down, no one will be able to log into email. From that standpoint, that is kind of the same situation as an on-premise exchange, where if you lose internet connectivity, those external users, those other users can't communicate and can't send mail.
Yeah, so that's a big thing why we definitely want to hit on, you know, from a business perspective. This is one of the considerations that it is a recommended configuration, but which is one of the last bullet point there was saying it's typically recommended for companies in the mid space or more than 50 staff, or typically when they have more than 2 or 3 servers on premise, because we can build some of that redundancy. Having a redundant internet connection makes more business sense, can be more cost justified. You know, redundant internet connection is actually a pretty common recommendation today, but just being aware that, you know, when you do the single sign-on, not only from if you're an IT person, but as a business owner perspective or business owner or operator, realize that there is, you know, the biggest limitation and the biggest risk is that if your internet, if somehow, some way, the hosted version of Office 365 loses connectivity to your infrastructure, then they will not be able to get their email or authenticate to any of the services that's being hosted. So that's where that redundancy and having that redundancy, if you're using the single sign-on option, is critical.
Yep, absolutely. And the third one that we're going to lightly touch on, because this is more of a larger enterprise level, is a hybrid model. And something to consider with the hybrid model is you have to have single sign-on. So it's just, and this is really the way that Office 365 works and a lot of Office products work, is it just builds on the previous version. So your hybrid model is really your last model that we're going to look on and touch on. And we're going to touch on it kind of briefly with it. It's an integrated and a hosted Exchange environment. That means that you have an Exchange 2010 or you have your local Exchange server that is actively talking and communicating with Office 365 and their hosted Exchange environment. You know, it's going to use single sign-on, so you have end users having that one password and the one login on their corporate network. Very, very briefly with that, I mean, it gives you a lot more management access with the integrated model because you still have a local Exchange server to manage. With Office 365 on the higher levels and even with single sign-on, you do have a lot of manageability, but not to the level of control as you would with a hybrid. And it is typically recommended for companies with more than 500 users. It's not really something that I would even talk about implementing at even a smaller level because you're talking about supporting 2 environments. And
yeah, and that's
kind of
one of the reasons why we're. Yeah, I was just going to say, Mike, on that. I mean, we really wanted to touch on this, not because the majority of the people on this call are listening in the future will most likely not be using this model, this version, this way of deployment, but we wanted to touch on it from the standpoint that we are aware of it and we know how to do it, and that if there happens to be folks that are thinking that this model might be good for them, then we wanted to at least touch on it and kind of give you the high-level overview. So, but as you're doing, Micah, let's keep going because this is a third model, but the majority of people that we work with are not going to ever deploy this model.
Right. And so that kind of goes into, with your deployment options, one of the big things that's just a really big gotcha is mobility strategy. Everybody thinks, hey, I've got a smartphone. Not all of those smartphones are going to work. I mean, there are a lot of environments where you go in and you have an older Android phone or you have an older device that doesn't connect correctly to it. Especially in this day and age, you know, BlackBerries are a big one. Any of the more advanced IT staff that are kind of listening in, or any of the future people that are listening in, know that when you have a BlackBerry, you need to have a BlackBerry, a BES server, a BlackBerry Enterprise server, Enterprise systems. The one nice thing about Office 365, it is a free service that is included in all of their parts. It does require additional configuration, but there is no additional cost for it. I know there are not a lot of people nowadays that are really using BlackBerries, but it is something that you do need to plan for your deployment, is what you're using for a mobile strategy. And especially today's day and age, mobile devices, tablets, cell phones, everybody's mobile, everybody's on the move. Being able to plan and have a mobile strategy around that. The easiest way to plan out your mobile strategy with that is all phones that are certified for Microsoft Exchange ActiveSync have a Microsoft ActiveSync icon. They have that Outlook icon when going in to set up those phones. That means that it will be fully capable of connecting and automatically configuring to Office 365. Migration challenges and how to prepare for them. Just going to kind of we're going to kind of dig in now a little bit more to what we need to do and what you as a business owner or as an IT professional want to really look at and what you want to prepare for. And I'm going to preface this by saying the more time you have to prepare, the better you're going to be off. You end up setting yourself up and giving yourself a time frame to work with, and digging into that, you're going to start with workstation software requirements. Everybody uses a workstation. Not all the workstations are going to work with Office 365. If you have older devices, you have older software and older licensing, you're going to have to upgrade that to stay current and to be compatible with it. The biggest one, Office Suites, Office 2007 is a minimum. Office 2010 is recommended and recognized as what needs to be used and what you want to use with Office 365. Office 2007 will work and will connect to it, but there are challenges with calendar and sharing limitations because it's a different environment. Office 365 is backboned on Exchange 2010, which from an IT standpoint is very, very different from 2007 or 2003, and that's why there's the compatibility issues there. There are software that you can go in and you want to prep for when you're doing your deployments, and one of them is Microsoft Office Sign-In Assistant. It is a little piece of software. It's not really anything that requires any additional configuration beyond installing it, but it helps with Outlook and Lync connectivity. With Office 365 and Lync, you will never be able to connect to the actual Lync server or services without having this sign-in assistant. It really just kind of creates that link and knows and helps your computer know that you need to really connect online and stay online. And a couple of the things to prepare for it and to really know where you're going with it and kind of strategize what you need to do on workstations. Microsoft Office 365 has kind of two different segments for this for the compatibility check. You can do one beforehand, and it actually is a machine compatibility check and prep tool. You can run this on all of your workstations, and it'll actually let you know, hey, this one is good to go, it's all set. It will also download critical updates that you need to make sure that Office and your sign-in assistant are set up and ready to go for that data migration or when you're ready to switch over. The second piece to that is a configuration tool. So day after all my emails switched over, now I have to get all my users switched over. What do? There is a tool built into every single user's download on their Outlook web access that will allow you to download and run a configuration tool that will make sure that it is A, talking with Office 365, B, going in and actually configuring Lync, and C, making sure that Outlook is going to be able to be properly configured and connect. So it will check your auto-discover records. It will check and make sure that it can communicate. The only thing that does not do is go into Outlook specifically and reset all of those settings. That's something that still needs to be done manually, or from an administration standpoint, you could force it to delete the old profiles or remove the old profiles and force it to make a new one, which after running that compatibility check, they should be able to click next a few times and type in their password, and their Outlook is configured. Kind of moving on from that, you get into the data migration. Really simple. How am I going to get all my email in my office on Office 365? Large mailboxes, and this is really when preparing and setting up your time frame comes into play. I know that my Exchange databases and my users, I have 20 users that have 2 big mailboxes. That's really where it comes into play. Migrations of my CEO, or I have a 20 gig email inbox that I don't like to delete anything, and I don't want to. And that's one of the huge bonuses of Office 365 is you have 25 gigs of a mailbox, and you can partner, and we touch on it more with archiving and some of the other features for it. But you can have those large mailboxes. It's just going to take time to transfer, and you really need to account for that. Your large attachments in your mail messages. There are several tools out there that will help you move and migrate your mail, and we're going to touch on that in a minute. But the large attachments have a very, very hard time transferring, and we need to just really account for that. You need to make sure that if you have that email of somebody sent you, a huge PDF, or somebody sent you a zipped file that has, 50 megs in it, and it's an individual mail item, you really need to make sure that A, we're either pulling that information or that attachment off and deleting that email, or kind of going in and doing proactive cleanup to make sure that you're not going to run into those issues. And that's just really kind of circling back to time to prepare and needing to prepare for it, and knowing what you're really getting into. There are some fantastic tools out there. Microsoft Office 365 has its own migration tool. My personal experience is I don't like to use it just because it's kind of bulky and it's really slow. Migration Wiz is something that we use, and it is kind of our standard for our process of migrating users from Office 365 or from the local exchange to Office 365. Migration Wiz gives you the ability to run multiple passes, which that means, all right, I've planned it in 45 days where everybody's going to be switched over to Office 365. I can run a pass at 15 days, which is going to kind of do that initial run, get everything updated, and move all of that mail. And then I'm going to do it again at 30 days, and I'm going to run it so that we get all of that mail in between that 15 and 30, and say we missed a mailbox. All of that's going to kind of get caught up. So you're taking the load off of the time to transfer because you're doing it in steps. The first one is always the largest, and what I can tell you is when you get to that last one that's the day after the switch, it takes about 15 minutes to run through 30 mailboxes. It's really, really nice tools, and just knowing to go in and to use those tools in a proper manner, or which tools to really use, definitely will make it a great prep tool, and it's going to really cut down on the challenges that you're going to have when migrating.
So on that point, I just kind of want to hit on the data migration. This is where it can really, as Micah was already saying, but this is really where it can really suck a lot of time, right? There can be a lot of time in babysitting this process and prepping your mailboxes to skinny the size, or getting rid of large attachments, or realizing that you have, which we'll get to in other points here in a minute, but from a bandwidth perspective, I mean, it just takes time. We can only move data across the internet connection as fast as the internet connection will allow us, as well as the fact that you still, typically when we're doing some of this, you're still operating business, so your typical internet usage is still going on, so we don't want to completely hobble your environment by transferring all the data but not allowing your regular business to happen. So this is a key component that we definitely want to make sure people are aware of, that the data migration piece is one of the most critical relative to the impact to the end users, the impact to the organization, as far as the time that it's going to take to actually get this done.
Right, and it is the largest component in what you're going to spend the most time in, maybe outside of prepping the workstations, doing your own configuration, but your data migration itself is the largest component, and like Nathan said, the biggest time component that you have. So the other thing when you're going in and moving on to the next one is, the biggest thing is to have a clean Active Directory before you're setting up. This really kind of is more for a single sign-on environment, or in any scenario, because DirSync or Directory Sync tool is a free service and a free tool. If you can set it up, set it up. But you need to make sure that before you run that initial sync, you have a clean Active Directory. If you don't, you're going to end up with a situation where you have all of those disabled users are getting synced. You have, all of those service accounts, especially on like a small business server. There's a lot of accounts that are created by the server itself. All of those would get moved up to Office 365. They then all of a sudden they're in your address book, and it's a really big mess to have to go back through and clean it up. Going through and cleaning up Active Directory beforehand, really make sure that when you use your synchronization, the user accounts are going to work automatically. And yeah, a clean Active Directory, it's not going to synchronize your junk that's in there. And that's, your service accounts, the stuff that you don't want people to see, the administrator account names, or the other distribution groups and that kind of stuff. Just making sure that you know what you want to sync, you plan it out, and then you do your deployment. And kind of moving on to that, as I already touched, I mean, 25 gigs of space per mailbox, that's huge. Data and storage is a huge concern for anybody that runs an on-premise Exchange environment, and having 25 gigs of space per mailbox is, and it's any IT person or any business person's kind of pipe dream to actually be able to think that you don't have to worry about the space of those users. Circling back around to that migration standpoint, if you have the bandwidth, how many times as an IT person or a business person you've been like, I'm out of space on my Exchange server. I need to archive all of this data that I have so that I can keep using my inbox. Well, what we really recommend is if you have the space or you have the ability to on these mailboxes, when we do your migration or when you do your migration, that you move those archives and you move them right back into your inbox so that all goes up onto the cloud because you have the space now. And one of the great features of Office 365 that I think that everybody overlooks, in addition to Lync and this kind of stuff, is you have up to 100 gigabytes of archive space if you enable it and you go into it. So that archive that you just pulled in and you moved up, you can now separate it back out, and you can set it up so that it automatically goes that I don't really want to delete anything. I have a bunch of things that I really like to save, and I need to sometimes go back 2-3 years and look at stuff. You can set it up to archive and automatically archive stuff after a certain date, or a specific folder does it, once a month. It's very similar to what Outlook does, but it's doing it at the server level, so there's a lot more reliability there. The other thing for it is, it's a huge thing in any company, legal hold. Legal hold is available. It is something that is built right into Office 365 for those mailboxes. If you have litigation or legal hold that you need to do on them, it's as easy as turning it on, and that's fantastic. It's a very, very nice feature to have as an administrator. So the
Mike,
biggest
sure
thing.
Going through those things, if I may interject really quick, 'cause I know from a customer perspective, when I'm having conversations with different customers about this particular issue is brought up a lot. It's the file transfer piece that we were talking about just a moment ago, and then the archives, because a lot of people will have archive data, or they definitely have their existing email data that sits either on their Exchange server, or they might again have archive data on their local machine. And the big question is, well, do I really need to move that to Office 365? So from a business perspective, one of the values of moving to Office 365 from a cost-saving perspective is that the backup is included, right? One of the, storing data indefinitely, the big cost for an organization is not the actual initial storage, it's actually the backup of it and making sure that you can go back and retrieve it. So that's where if you want to be able to capture the backup and you don't want to worry about some email sitting on one of your workstations, that if that workstation dies or has a problem, that email is going to go away. If that is a concern of yours, then this is what we'd recommend, and there's plenty of space to do it. Now, what that might mean is that it takes a little extra time to actually migrate the data, right, because you're pulling those archives back in. But again, we've got those tools. The migration list tool can handle that. And once you've moved it all up to the cloud and to this service, the backups are already included. You've got up to 100 gig of archive if you need to. You've got legal hold if you need to. So all that stuff is going to be a lot less expensive to do it up in the hosted environment than if you were to do it on-premise. And so that's kind of where those two pieces tie together. And from a business and considering the impact to your organization and the costs associated with that to your organization, it's going to be a lot less expensive moving that all to the cloud.
Right.
So thanks, Mike, for interjecting real quick.
Yep, no, not a problem at all. That's a fantastic point, is being able to think about it as, that computer actually was out on site, or I was on a flight and it got crushed in my bag, or they lost my bag, because how many times does that happen to somebody? You know, and that's just stuff to think about. Is when it's in the cloud, it's peace of mind. So, and that's exactly what Office 365 is bringing for you and contributing to that. Is that peace of mind that it is backed up and it is storage that you don't have to worry about. That being said, huge migration challenge, bandwidth. Do I have the ability and the internet connection and the speed to go in and to take my Exchange server? Exchange is a very chatty environment. It needs to be communicating, and it communicates a lot with all those workstations. Do I have the bandwidth to not only do the initial transfer using your migration with using the Office 365 tool or another tool to transfer all of my mailboxes to Office 365? You know, that's a huge bandwidth thing, as Nathan kind of already talked about as well. I mean, you need to account for that as a business impact, and if that means that when you're moving to Office 365, you look at actually upgrading your internet connection or your network infrastructure. The beast of Exchange and Exchange Online Office 365, it's the nature of it. It is a very chatty entity. It is a very, very bandwidth critical device. I mean, if you can't communicate effectively on that, you're going to have slow response times. Your email's not going to travel as fast as it needs to. And overall, I think the biggest thing for that is making sure you have the bandwidth to support it, so that all of your end users don't see it as a bad experience. Because if the first thing that somebody's going to point to if you don't have the required bandwidth is that Office 365, why did we move to it? You know, why are we having all these issues? I can't send or receive emails right. It just doesn't work. And the biggest thing with that is your bandwidth. If you don't have the bandwidth, you know, you're going to experience those issues, and then your end user experience is really going to suffer. You know, user experience will be very much enhanced with that additional bandwidth. Plus, who doesn't like surfing the internet faster? You know, above and beyond that. The big thing with the migration and how to prepare for it, you look at the cost. It's monthly, it's quarterly, yearly, however you want to bill it. But hardware, you know, oh no, my Exchange server crashed, my hard drives went out, I got to go buy new drives, I have to get the warranty serviced. Or on the Microsoft E3 license, it's a higher up license that includes Microsoft Office Professional Plus. You won't ever have to pay for those licensing again, or for your licensing for your server, or for your Exchange environment. You're always going to be on the latest and greatest. Office 365 also has CRM Online. How great would it be to say, I'm always on the latest and greatest CRM, and I don't have to pay for it when I need to upgrade or when we need to move. And now,
the exciting part.
The exciting part, the fun part. What does it do? Why should I use it? Basic communication functionality, individual and group IM. You know, hey, I think we all remember AOL Instant Messenger. It's not really like that, but it is. You know, I'm going to go in here. I'm going to change some settings here quick, and we can go do it.
I'll show you what Lync looks like.
Yeah. All right. Just got to change my screen sharing options here to show my whole desktop here. So
Mike's going to show the screen. I just sent Mike an instant message from Lync, so he'll show you what that looks like on his screen here, and we'll show some of the screen sharing options. But this is a tool we use a lot internally there. You can see it.
All right. So great communication and productivity tool that I personally think how I got along without it. I mean, I know how it was. I was running over to other people's desks constantly asking them questions. But now being able to actually go in and communicate with that is a great tool. You know, you can go in and talk. And then there's screen sharing abilities and a lot of that we'll show you here in a minute as we go through this. Visual presence. The big thing for that is, hey, Nathan's available right now. You know, look, he's you know, he's got his comments. Are you a lion? Are you a camel? It's kind of one of our inter-office things. You can say what you're working on. You can say if you're busy. It will actually communicate properly with Outlook itself. So if you're in a meeting, it's going to change that status for you. You know, some of the better integration pieces, if you're on a call with the phone system stuff, it'll automatically pick up for you with that. Or in a meeting, away and busy, it's a great tool to use for that. The other big part about that is because you're internalizing this communication, you're going to take a little bit of stress off of Exchange because you're not bouncing as many little, you know, one-sentence emails back and forth because, hey, I can just ask him on Lync because he's available. And then data privacy. The huge thing for a business owner is I want to make sure that what I'm talking about and what we're talking about as a business stays within our business. And, you know, instead of having people go to like Google Talk or Facebook or anything like that, being able to go in here and talk to Nate, it's all internal. It doesn't leave your environment. And it's talking with Office 365, but it's a secure communication that you really don't have to worry about. And in most cases, unless you're disabling it or you want it disabled, your conversation history is tracked right within Outlook on a 2010. So, hey, you know I was talking to Nate about that yesterday. What did he tell me that was? And then being able to go back into your conversation history and say, oh, yeah, that's what he was talking about. I needed to do that presentation. That kind of thing. It's really a great tool for being able to do that. Collaboration functionality, and this is where we get to have a little bit of fun with this. I'll kind of click through this and just say voice and video calls. I've used it personally when collaborating and working on stuff. It's a great messaging tool. Unfortunately, with us being on this webinar, we're not able to hop on a different phone call, but I can call Nate, and then, you know, if you have some of the phone system stuff set up with a more advanced thing, you can actually call work numbers. You can call all of their contact IDs. Lync call is just exactly what it says. I'm going to call his Lync. It's going to talk through his speakers and microphone, and we'll be able to talk with that. Mobility, laptops. Most laptops have a video camera nowadays. I want to start a video call, and you'll be able to video chat. What I would tell you with that is a video call really only works from one person to the other. It's not a huge webinar environment, but that's where we go into sharing. I can have an audio call going. I can invite people, and the biggest thing to think about this as well is I don't have to just limit myself for these meetings and for this sharing, for this Lync conversation and everything like that to my own users just in my office. You can send Lync online meeting invitations to anyone, whether they have Office 365 or not. And you can also set up sharing and trusting in between other users that have either a Lync 2010 server or they're using Office 365. So I need to communicate with one of my coworkers that is at a different company now that we work with on a regular basis, and I want to communicate with him about a business question that I have on how they're working. I can send that to them as long as my IT team or, you know, the way that it's set up to trust and to talk to each other. And that's a huge, huge tool that a lot of people even that are using Lync miss out on. But to go into the communication side, I want to do a whiteboard. And now I'm presenting to Nathan. Now Nathan's kind of joining the whiteboard. And we will go in here and see if I can use my pen.
So what popped up on my screen is Micah did that. He said he wants to share a whiteboard. So on my screen, I had a pop-up that said, Micah would like to share his whiteboard, and then I have the opportunity to accept that or not. So I chose to accept that session. So now I'm actually viewing, on one of my monitors, I'm viewing Micah writing, I'm just sharing this, and then on my other monitor, I actually have the window popping up that says the same thing. So he's able to draw, and we'll see all that as well.
Yep.
We're not the best artists here at Mytech. You know, I've never proclaimed to be. That's what we shoot for.
So that's my horrible interpretation of a smiley face. But you get the idea, and you can copy and paste into this pictures and images, and going in and, hey, what did you think of this image? Or, hey, what did you really want to work with that? Whiteboard is one of the avenues as far as sharing. So I'm going to stop sharing the whiteboard here. And the stage stays up. The stage is what I want to, anything I want to share, I can. So if I want to share my desktop, and I'm not going to do that because we're already sharing my desktop to the webinar here, or the program, you can do either one of those. That's essentially what I'm doing right now through the webinar program. I'm showing you my desktop. I'm showing you the PowerPoint program, and as you can see, Lync has it right now. It knows that I have PowerPoint open. It asks me if I want to show that PowerPoint presentation. So with that, we can invite other users in, external or internal. So if I'm doing an internal meeting and I just want to show everybody, I can't use a conference room right now, but I've got 5 to 7 people or even the whole office where I want to go through and show a presentation quick, I can do that. And everybody can stay at their desks, and it can be a very, very productive and great tool. Polling, hey, I've got 4 or 5 other coworkers in the office, and I was thinking about either ordering pizza or getting Jimmy John's. You know what? Do you want pizza or do you want Jimmy John's? That's really what it is. So here's your choices. And what's for lunch? And it uploads the poll. And then as people do it, you can see who's voting. And I can't spell, but you get the idea with that. As Nate goes in and he says, yeah, he wants Jimmy John's too. So there's a lot of utilities that are built right into Lync that you can use, and it'll really kind of create that productive and really open communication atmosphere. It's a great tool that even a lot of our current users and current clients aren't necessarily using because they just don't know that they want to use it, or that option's available, but they don't really know what it is, or they don't really know how to use it. So that's really something to think about with Lync, is you have all this functionality that you can use these calls. And the one thing I would say about that is as soon as you really start heavily using Lync, it really circles back around to the bandwidth. Using external contacts and hosting meetings like that, yes, even though Office 365 is a cloud service, you still need to have that communication line and be able to communicate with a decent amount of bandwidth to have these presentations or to communicate externally. And, we're in a mobile world. Androids, iPhones, all have Lync application. I believe it's actually free. You can download it, and that will connect. So if you're outside the office, or you're even in the office but you're not by your desk, you have Lync on your phone. You can sign into it, and you can keep that communication and that open flow of information in between people going 24/7. So, we discussed a few different things here in this webinar. Different deployment options for Office 365. There's definitely a lot of different options and a lot of different configurations that really any business, whether it's 5, 10 people in an office, 2 people in an office, or 25,000 users spread across the world, there is a deployment option for any size business with Office 365. Migration challenges, really it comes down to, do I have the bandwidth to support what I want to do? And do I have a good time frame and a reasonable time frame to migrate all the data up to Office 365, as well as make sure that we are fully prepared for it? Making sure that, we don't end up in a situation of oh no, we completely forgot that those 5 users all have BlackBerries and now we have to go in and set that up. Or that, I actually do use a different, I have another email address that I normally use and I completely forgot about it and now I'm not getting half my mail. And knowing to look for that and knowing to prepare for that is really how you're going to make this a smooth transition and a great transition for both you and your employees. And then Lync, now that you guys have seen what it does, use it. It's a fantastic tool. We use it here in our office daily. And like I said before, I don't know what I would do without it. Just from a communication standpoint, it's a huge time saver, and it is a great productivity piece for everybody in your office and then outside of your office as well. So that being said, I want to thank you for participating in the Mytech U.
Yeah, thanks everyone. So, and there was a lot of chat going on the Q&A online. So I will be following up with individuals because there are a couple questions that are going to be best handled verbally. So I'm going to be doing that later today. But I want to say thanks, Micah, for taking the time to go through this information today. Everyone listening today or watching in the future, thank you for taking the time and investing in some Mytech U discussion education and see how you can help roll out Office 365 if it makes sense for you, or if there's any way we can help, please let us know. So thank you very much, everyone. We'll be signing off, and any outstanding questions, I will be following up with everyone individually. Thank you very much, and have a great day.
Thank you.